Hello and welcome to Who's the Bossk? It's a Star Wars podcast from laughingplace.com. My name is Mike Celestino. I am your host. I am the lead Southern California reporter and editorial director for Star Wars content at Laughing Place. This is episode number 184 of Who's the Bossk, and we will be discussing the latest episode of Lucasfilm's animated series, Star Wars The Bad Batch, which was released yesterday on Disney Plus. And for that conversation, I have invited back on the show from the Geeky Waffle Network and the Space Waffles podcast. It's Candace Kaw. Candace, how are you? Thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm always down to talk some Star Wars.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. And we will be talking about Bad Batch in a little bit. By the way, we are recording this live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. If you would like to comment or have any questions, we'll be happy to address those. First, let me ask you, how are you, Candace? What's been going on over there at Geeky Waffle or your Space Waffle podcast? Anything notable come up lately in that area?
My co-host Arzu actually came down last month. I live in Orlando now, so I'm right
Yeah.
next to Disney. So we rode Rise of the Resistance like 4 times because
Oh, awesome.
it's just such a great ride. We're big theme park fans, and then plus Star Wars, it's everything. So yeah, we spend a lot of time in Batu. So we got some content from there coming out soon.
Oh, great. So was that her first time going on the attraction?
It was her second time.
Her second time. Great. Sweet. So you've got content coming from Batu to the podcast. That's awesome. And where can people find that if they want to track that down?
Yeah, the geekywaffle.com is where you can find all our shows and blog posts and videos.
Sweet. Geekywaffle.com. All right. We got to do something called the 5 Star Wars questions. So this is your second time on the show, and that means you've graduated to level 2 of the 5 Star Wars questions. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
All right. Number 1 of the 5 Star Wars questions, level 2. Do you have a favorite line of dialogue in a Star Wars movie or television show?
I think it's just because as a kid, my dad would repeat it all the time. Is Yoda like, there is no try, do or do not.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I grew up with a father who just loved Yoda. He still loves Yoda
Okay.
and just constantly quoting him.
Great. That's a great choice. Definitely a classic line there that tends to get quoted quite a bit. Do or do not, there is no try from Yoda. Number 2, which Star Wars planet would you choose to live on and why?
I think it would be Naboo just because of the architecture and
Yeah.
I mean, other than Palpatine, the other politicians seem pretty nice, you know?
Right. Yes.
So it just seems so pretty and they have a focus on art and it's not like right in the middle of the galaxy too. It's kind of like
Right.
off to the side.
Yeah, that has proven to be a popular choice as well. Like we said last week on the show, it's kind of like the Italian countryside planet of Star
Oh
Wars.
yeah, I'm
So, yeah,
Lake Como. It's on my list. Not just
yeah,
because of Star Wars, but one of the reasons it's Star Wars.
right. I wonder, have they really? I mean, I'm kind of still going through the Darth Plagueis novel. I haven't read the whole thing, but have they talked about like why Naboo produced Palpatine? Like, what was it about that planet that caused such a great evil to come out of it? Or is it just like
I
happenstance?
don't I don't think Naboo can be blamed for that. I mean, like,
Yeah. But like you said,
but yeah.
like all the other politicians coming out of there seem to be pretty decent. Like the Queen is cool, and then Boss Nass is a cool dude. So
Yeah.
um it's weird that Palpatine came from the same place that all those other cool people came from. Uh, hopefully they'll get into that eventually. Number 3. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I always think of that Robot Chicken Star Wars sketch
Yeah.
where he's like a really gung ho guy first, and then but everybody like makes fun of him and like just puts down his ideas, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna be evil now."
Right,
It's
right,
like
right.
where
Yeah, those I think those, Robot Chicken guys are onto something there for sure. Number 3, what is your favorite era in the Star Wars storytelling timeline? And the examples that I always give are the Old Republic, which, is thousands of years before the original trilogy. Then you have the High Republic, which is a few hundred years before the movies. Then you've got the Fall of the Jedi era, which is the prequel trilogy. Then there's the Reign of the Empire, which is between episodes 3 and 4. And then you've got the Age of Rebellion is the original trilogy. Then there's the New Republic era, which is when the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett, all those shows take place. Then there's the sequel trilogy, which we call the Rise of the First Order. And I also like to include the Legends timeline, which is all the old canon, expanded universe stuff, just in case you want to pick that instead. Of all those, do you have a favorite, and why? Why is your favorite what you chose?
I think it's definitely the Reign of the Empire slash Age of the Rebellion, like right up in between
Okay.
there because I first saw like the original trilogy in 1997. That was my first Star Wars, so I fell in
Yeah.
love with like the rebellion and everything like that instantly. And Star Wars Rebels is my favorite of all the TV shows, live action or animated. So very close to my heart, the rebellion age.
Great. So yeah, Age of the Empire is what we're going to be talking about, or the Rise of the Empire. What did I say? Yeah, Reign of the
Right.
Empire
Yeah.
is what we're going to be talking about with Bad Batch, because that's kind of when that takes
Yeah.
place. Although, what you mentioned, like Rebels and then Rogue One is a little bit later. Andor takes place in that time period too. And then, of course, the original trilogy era. So you saw the special edition in '97 in the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a fun time to be a Star Wars fan. Number 4, which Star Wars creature would you like to have as a pet?
Cat. I think they're adorable. Where is my
Yeah.
mob cat? I have one. I don't know where he
Okay.
went, but it's like a little pillow one. My dog probably took
Yeah.
it. But I think they're adorable and they warn you if intruders are around, so that's cool.
Right.
And I just I'm a Rebels fan, so that kind of just goes with it.
What did you think of the first? Well, I guess we've seen Lothcats and Tukas or whatever here and there in the Mandalorian and stuff, but the Lothcats did get some screen time in Ahsoka in live action. What did you think of that?
Oh, Murley, I think his name is. There's
Okay.
actually like I don't know if you know like a Disney Plus, there's like a just a few hour long thing where he's
Right.
on screen and just like a lo-fi like music playing
Yeah.
and he's just purring and having a great time. I loved him. I wish they took him on the trip with them, you know?
Right. It's like a
Yeah.
little sidekick, like Pocahontas would have the little raccoon or something, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I got
Miko.
to see the yeah, Miko. I got to see
I'm a 90s
uh,
kid.
there you go. They had the Lothcat animatronic that they built at San Diego Comic-Con last year. It was in like a little display, and that was just cool to see it up close and see how because some shots were animatronic and some were CGI, obviously, but it was cool to see how they built the puppet and how articulated it was in person. Hope we get to see more in upcoming shows. Number 5, this is one of my favorite ones. So let's pretend you're Kathleen Kennedy, you're the president of Lucasfilm, and you can bring in any filmmaker or author, any creative person, really. You can bring them in to have a meeting about creating their own Star Wars story. Who would you call into that meeting? Which creative person would you like to see work in the world of Star Wars?
Well, there's so many, but like I am so curious about the Lord and Miller version of Solo.
Oh,
I
yeah.
bring them back and say, just piece together what you can because I need a book about this production of it because
Right.
it just sounds insane and amazing, and I'm just really curious about that.
I would
But
love to see
yeah,
that too. I'm a big fan of their work. The Lego movie is
yeah.
great. The Spider-Man stuff they've done, all the things before that. And the little bits and pieces that I've heard about their stuff that like made it into the movie, all that stuff is like Han trying to speak Wookiee or Shriwook or whatever to Chewbacca. Like apparently that came right from Lord and Miller. So I think it would have been a little bit more fun. And I always do wonder like what happened behind the scenes to make it not work out, because it seems like everything they touch kind of turns to gold. Like
Yeah.
it was kind of a no-brainer to bring them on in the first place, but I have to wonder like why didn't it work out? Do you have any like thoughts or insight into that from what you know?
From what I read, it was they did too much improv, and when you have things that are like CGI based and production based like
Yeah,
that, you can't really afford to do that much. But I'm just
right.
always thinking of like um the Russo brothers come from sitcoms. So
Yeah.
they were fine in Marvel. So I'm like wondering what the difference was really.
Yeah, me too. I wonder if we'll ever really know the in-depth backstory of that, or if that'll just like stay in the Lucasfilm vault. That's going to bring us to the end of the 5 Star Wars questions. Let's just say hi to somebody in the comments here. This person's name is Bloom, and they agreed with you. Well, this one says Age of Rebellion or High Republic, which is there's been a lot of High Republic content lately, so I appreciate that comment. And then Bloom also agreed with you about the Loth Cat, so thank you for commenting there, Bloom. Right now, I want to throw to some interviews that I did. Now, if you're watching this live on the Laughing Place YouTube channel, you're not going to see or hear these. But the good news is you can go and listen to this podcast later on, or you could simply watch the video of these interviews right here on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with some of the folks involved with this show, Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock, which I've talked about on this podcast before. You're a 90s kid. You said I was an 80s kid. So I grew up on Fraggle Rock, and it's been kind of rebooted, and it's a wonderful reboot. Really one of the best reboots that really captures the spirit and feel of the original show. So I got to speak with, first of all, you're going to hear me talking to two of the actual Fraggles, Moki and Red Fraggle from
That's
Fraggle Rock.
awesome.
And then after that, these interviews are just less than 5 minutes each. But right after that, I'm going to play my interview with the executive producers. Those are Matt Fussfeld, Holly Stanford, and John Tartaglia, who also voices or performs Gobo Fraggle on the show. So here is my interviews. Again, you're not going to hear these live, but you'll hear them later. My interviews with the folks behind Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock, including two actual Fraggles themselves. And that was my interview, my 2 interviews with Moki and Red Fraggle and the executive producers behind Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock, season 2 of which will be premiering tomorrow as of this recording, Friday, March 29th on Apple TV Plus. I have to ask you before we move on, Candace, are you familiar at all with Fraggle Rock? Have you seen either the original
Oh
show or
yeah.
this reboot show?
I saw I we had VHSs because we
Yeah,
were
okay.
like my sister and I were very into the Muppets,
Yeah,
and my mom got like some VHSs, and I feel like it was on Disney Channel in the 90s too. Like they had
okay.
reruns. Or I might be remembering it wrong. They had reruns somewhere. But anything Jim Henson related, we were all over.
Oh, great. Cool. Yeah. I love that show. And the funny thing about like growing up watching Fraggle Rock and the Muppets is that I
Mhm.
thought they were real. I thought they were like
Oh yeah.
real beings that you could meet and talk to if you wanted to. And then now as an adult, I've had these opportunities where, because through entertainment, my job as an entertainment journalist, I can like
Yeah.
talk to the Fraggles, or I've talked to a Muppet or two here before, in the past for other projects, and it's just so surreal, having grown up on them and thinking that they were real as kids, and then kind of having that semi confirmed for me, even though in my head I know that they're puppets. It's hard not to lose myself in
Oh yeah.
interacting
No.
with those characters.
Epcot had, Beaker and, Professor Honeydew, like, rolling
Yes.
around, and they had someone talking through him, and he, like, talked to me, and I was like, "I'm an adult, but I feel like a little kid again," because it is something, like, you dreamed of, like, these characters actually speaking to you, so it's so
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how I felt. So, I hope you enjoyed those interviews. And like I said, Back to the Rock, Fraggle Rock Back to the Rock season 2 is on Apple TV Plus as of tomorrow, March 29th. Let's get into some Star Wars headlines for this week. First of all, this is something I wanted to mention last week, and I totally forgot to put it in the list. But they announced the new inductees for the Disney Legends. Now, these are going to be handed out at D23. It used to be called D23 Expo. Now it's called D23, the Ultimate Disney Fan event. And this is going to be held in August in Anaheim. Is this something that you've ever attended, Candace?
No, I haven't. It's on my list, but I'm saving up for Star Wars Celebration Tokyo.
There you go.
So
Oh, you're going to be in Tokyo. Hope I see you there. So yeah, this list of Disney legends came out. Again, this is going to be handed out at the convention D23, and the list includes three very big, very famous Star Wars contributors. One is Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo, of course. Another is Frank Oz, who is the performer behind Yoda. And then the third is maybe one of the most important. I mean, these are all incredibly important contributors to
yeah,
Star Wars, but this last guy is definitely like top three. John Williams, who of course wrote the music for all the original score for all 9 of the Skywalker saga films. So congratulations, congratulations to all 3 of those, and looking forward to seeing you get those awards at D23 in August here in Southern California. Very exciting news from that part of the Disney family. Let's go. Oh, now we've got news about Celebration too, like you just mentioned. Star Wars
yeah,
Celebration 2024. It's about a year from now, April 2024 in Japan. I'm hoping to be
2025.
there. 2025. Yes. Why did I put 2024 on here? Thank you for the correction.
Because
Um,
it doesn't feel like it's 2024 yet, but
yeah,
it is.
you're
It
right.
has been for months, apparently. I've been
So
told.
we yes, it has been for several months, but now next year is going to be 2025, and we'll be going to Tokyo hopefully to Star Wars Celebration Japan, and they released key art, which was very cool looking, and the ticketing information for Star Wars Celebration. Now you said that you are planning to go to this one. How certain are you
That's
that you'll be be heading over there?
I Tokyo was always on my bucket list anyway, and
Yeah.
this just feels like an excuse, like a perfect excuse to go because London was so much fun. Like we went to Paris beforehand, and then London, I got to hang out with all my friends after the convention. So it's just like going to Tokyo with a bunch of my friends,
Yeah.
and there's Star Wars there, and then also Disney Tokyo too. Like it's just
Yes.
check, check, check.
Yeah, no, that's the big
But
thing for me too, is I've always wanted to see the Disney parks in Japan. I've heard so many cool things about like Tokyo Disney Sea is supposed to be one of the best theme parks, and definitely gonna plan to get there at least a few days early to see the city, of course, and take in
yeah,
Japan, and then also visit the theme parks. And then yeah, Star Wars Celebration is always a blast. Can't wait. And that's coming up in April of 2025. Now you can find all the information about the tickets, how to acquire tickets for the show, and then you can look at the key art over at starwarscelebration.com, and we have it at laughingplace.com as well. Another announcement that came out in the past week is we'll be getting those 9 Skywalker Saga movies that I mentioned earlier back in theaters for May the 4th this year, which is coming up just a little over a month from now. So you could watch a full marathon of all 9 Skywalker Saga films, from the prequels to the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy. Is this something that you would consider doing, Candace?
no, no, I love these movies so much. I am gonna see Phantom Menace
Yeah.
when it's re-released. That yes, but
Okay.
like that's 20 hours, right?
Something like
Or
that. Yeah.
so?
Right.
Like you
Too
gotta
much.
sleep.
I I'm right there with you. I also will most likely be seeing Phantom Menace here at a theater called El Capitan, which is Disney's home in
That's awesome.
Hollywood. Yeah, but I don't think I can do the marathon. In fact, when The Force Awakens came out, they did a marathon of the then 6 existing movies before that, and I sat down for the Phantom Menace and had like a panic attack, and had to leave because I was like, this is gonna be too long. And it was like it was at the El Capitan, which has these really old, very cramped and tiny seats. And I was right in the middle of the row and I got like claustrophobic. I was like, I can't do this for however many hours this is gonna be. So I freaked out and I left. But yeah, I think I kind of learned my
Oh,
lesson there. I
gosh.
always have to see like from that point on, I have to sit on the aisle if I go to the movies, especially at El Capitan. But I think I'm gonna take a pass on the marathon. Just watch the
Yeah,
one movie.
3-hour movies
Yeah.
me anyway. I'm just that's like you have to commit the entire day. Like,
Yes.
it's too much. I love
Agreed.
them. I
Yeah.
love them, but I'm excited for Phantom Menace returning.
Yeah.
Get to see pod
And
racing on the
we
big
do
screen
like
again.
movie marathons. My wife and I do like movie marathons at home. Like when Ghostbusters, the new one came out, we watched all the old ones. You can watch them at home on the 4K disc, and you
Yeah.
know you have the ability to kind of breathe a little bit and
Pause if you
use
need
the restroom.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can pause,
exactly.
you can have dinner, you could do a few chores during the parts that
Yeah,
you have memorized,
right.
walk the dog. But yeah.
There you go. We have cats and they don't go outside, but I get your point. Yeah. Um, let's see. I read a new novel and I wrote the review. It's up on laughingplace.com right now. It's called Star Wars: The Living Force by John Jackson Miller. This is a novel about the Jedi High Council in the period before the prequel. So it's an adventure, when Anakin and Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn go into council chamber in the Phantom Menace, and you see all those people sitting in the chairs in that big circle. This book is about all those characters on a very specific adventure to a planet that we haven't heard a lot about before. I enjoyed the book. I thought it was. I will say that. Are you aware of this book, Candace?
I read it.
You read it already. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my dog's read it too, apparently.
Yeah.
Bucky, stop.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was written toward a younger reading level than I was expecting. That was the only thing that took me off guard about it. I was expecting more of a book for like adult Star Wars fans, and I would say this was written at like a young adult reading level. That was my only like minor critique or complaint. What did you think of The Living Force?
Oh, I was so excited to have Depa back
Right.
because I'm half Indian. So seeing her on screen on the Phantom Menace,
Oh yeah.
I'm pointing at her, like I see her. And of course I wanted more. And then Bad Batch, they bring her back and then they change her story from what the canon comics was.
Oh
So I
boy.
was like, okay. And then I was at New York Comic Con and they had like the booth and everything. And they're like, Depa's going to be a major part of this. And I'm like, tell me more, please. And yeah, I've been waiting for this for months.
Yeah,
So
so
I'm very
Depa,
excited.
she is a major part of it. She like goes undercover with kind of a pirate gang. And I was thinking back to there was a novel called Shatterpoint
Yes.
starring
The Mace
also
Windu.
about Depa Balaba and Mace Windu. It's kind of like a Star Wars retelling of Heart of Darkness, that book that became Apocalypse Now. But anyway, I really enjoyed that one, the Shatterpoint. This one was pretty good too. It's coming out in about a week and a half from now.
April
So
9th.
yeah, there you go. April 9th, Star Wars: The Living Force by John Jackson Miller. By the way, John Jackson Miller, he wrote a bunch of the old Star Wars, Old Republic comic books. I think he wrote some of the, what was it, Darth Revan novels, one of those.
Obi-Wan Kenobi book. The
Obi-Wan
Kenobi book.
Kenobi.
Oh,
Yes,
I have
Kenobi.
my signed poster of the Living Force right there.
Sweet.
Yes,
Nice.
I was like, it's there.
Very, very cool. Yeah, so that book is coming out in a couple weeks. Check that out. Comic books. Do you keep up with the Star Wars comics as well?
No, I buy them when they're like in books
Oh, like the trade
because
paperbacks.
yeah, I get overwhelmed
Okay,
otherwise.
they do churn them out. This week was only 2, which is good. Sometimes there's like 4. Uh, this week we had the High Republic Adventures Crash Landing by Daniel Jose Older. That's like a one shot. It's not a continuing story, although it did end with like a cliffhanger teasing the next one shot starring these same characters. And then Obi-Wan Kenobi #6. This was an adaptation of the Disney Plus live action series Obi-Wan Kenobi. I thought this series, the comic book series, was just like too faithful to the show. It was
The
basically like shot for shot exactly what you saw on
yeah,
TV.
I saw some of the art. I'm
Yeah.
not an artist, so I can't really say, but not my cup of tea.
I agree. This artist, his name is Salvador LaRocca. I have encountered his work before. I think he just like copies, he just like pauses the screen on Disney
Yeah,
Plus
that's
and he's
exactly
like
what it looked
copying
like
it.
because it's the same, like, "Oh, this was a medium shot? His
Yeah,
thing's a medium shot,"
yeah,
kind of thing. It's the same exact angles too,
yeah. I
so
want
it does
when
feel
they do
very
these
based.
comic book adaptations, I want to see them putting some creativity, at least into the artwork, so you get a different like creative take on it rather than just
Stylized a little bit.
exactly,
Have you
exactly
seen the
right.
Ahsoka cover?
The for the
The
comic
Yeah,
adaptation, I think so. Yeah,
yeah, it looks great. It
right.
looks different, it's colorful, and the characters aren't just like, "This is Rosie Dawson," you know? This
Right,
is
right, right.
Ahsoka.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I'm looking forward to that adaptation because I think it'll take a little bit more artistic liberty with the series and hopefully be more entertaining than this one was. I can't really recommend that Obi-Wan adaptation, but the High Republic stuff I always enjoy. Let's get into some merchandise news. So there's this campaign going on right now called Imperial March, and this is Lucasfilm's current campaign to promote Star Wars merch and products leading up to May the 4th. I actually got sent a box of Imperial March merchandise that I did an unboxing for on the Laughing Place YouTube channel. You can go and watch that. But we also have kind of rundowns of all the individual items that are coming out. This week's announcements include stuff from Hasbro, Heroes and Villains, Home Depot, which is interesting. I'm not sure what that exactly was. And then pop sockets, which are those things that go on the back of your phone. Um, yeah, there you
Baby
go.
Yoda.
Exactly.
My
You got
my
very
mother,
good.
when she buys me Star Wars stuff now, it's all just Baby Yoda, because that's what they have now, and she's never seen a Star Wars before, so
All right. Yeah, everybody knows Baby Yoda if you don't know Star Wars. So go check out Imperial March, laughingplace.com or starwars.com. They have it over there too. And then kind of lastly, in relation to that, they had this big event at the Empire State Building in New York City last week promoting Imperial March, and Darth Vader was there, the character, but also Darth Vader was there, the actor, because Hayden Christensen showed up, who you know as Anakin Skywalker in episodes 2 and 3, and he played Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, of course, last or a couple years ago. And they had this big event at the Empire State Building. Some fun photos came out of that, and they had all the licensees showed up and revealed a bunch of this merch that came out through Imperial March. Did you get to see any of the photos that came out of this event, Candace?
yeah, my friend Rachel was there actually, so
Nice.
she also, like, sent us stuff, like the blue milk seems very
Yeah,
interesting. Surprised it took them that long to do that, honestly.
right. It's a company called True Moo, I think, is putting out
Yeah.
this blue milk that you can buy at like the grocery store, which is fun. Usually you have to go to Galaxy's Edge and get your blue milk, but yeah, very cool. Lots of fun merch coming out this year ahead of May the 4th. And it seems like it's like a month and a half long celebration now because it started in like mid March and then it'll go all the way through May the 4th. And then right after that, in late May, we're going to get the Acolyte. So it never stops. It's a year long Star Wars celebration, and I'm excited for all of it. Let's get into our main topic for this week, and that is The Bad Batch Season 3, Episode 9. The title is The Harbinger. But before we get into that, so Candace, last time you were
Mhm.
on the show, we also talked about the Bad Batch during season 2. So I guess my question is going to be, what has your relationship with the show changed since then? Do you still like it as much as you did at that point? Do you like it more? Do you like it less? Do you feel more or less passionate about it?
I feel like after season 2, I I was like, I'm 110% in. I felt like a real connection to the characters because I feel like season 2 really gave you more insight into who these people were, but also
Yeah.
probably because they didn't know who they were as the characters themselves, the Bad
Right.
Batchers, because they were constantly just working for the Republic doing missions.
Yeah.
And they each, I always loved Omega. Omega is a sweet ball of sunshine. She's my favorite. But yeah, season 2, after season 2, I was like, I'm ready for season 3. I don't want it to be over, but I want to know what happens to these characters. I love them so
Right.
much.
Okay, so now we are a little bit more than halfway through season 3. What did you think of the previous 8 episodes now that those have come out, not including this week's episode?
I absolutely love the Crosshair Omega dynamic. It's such a great relationship, and because they're so different,
Yeah.
but they're still family. I've had some issues with the Florida sun not being able to see the dark scenes.
Oh, no.
So it has taken away a little bit of it for me. I'm always glad to see Rex back. I wish Echo was more with the Batch again because he's one of my favorites too.
Now can you get some
But
blackout curtains to block the sun out or what?
I have to. I can wait till 3 a.m. to watch it. I guess I
Right.
don't know. It's just hard. Like I want to watch during my lunch break because I'm like I need to
Yeah.
see them or watch it before work.
Fair enough. Yeah. I agree with you on all those points for sure. I hope that you find a way to see the darker scenes better. Let's get into this week's episode. It's called The Harbinger. It was directed by Stuart Lee, written by Jennifer Corbett. I think it was the showrunner of the show,
Yes.
and then editor Matt Michnovitz. Story editor Matt Michnovitz, who is, it seems to be the story editor on every episode. Let's see. What was your general overall thoughts coming out of The Harbinger?
This is one of my favorite Star Wars TV episodes of all time, like right up there, like top 5.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
I I love when episodes are character focused
Yeah.
and like this is one location. These are just like the 5 characters. Wait,
Yeah.
let me do them 5. Yes, 5 characters.
If you
6 counting
if you
Batcher.
count Batcher, the lurker
Yeah, Batcher
hound, it's
6.
6. Yeah.
Yeah, Batcher counts. Um, yeah, it felt like we got to know Omega more. We got to see Ventress, and Ventress, I felt like flawlessly went into the story, and it
Yeah.
made perfect sense for her to be there,
Okay.
considering she's a bounty hunter. She's friends with bounty hunters. That's of
Yeah.
course who Fennec called. Who would you call about midichlorians? And she said midichlorians. I was so happy
I
about that.
know. Yes,
She
that's one
said
of
the
my
M
bullet
word.
points here. When I heard that,
Sorry.
my brain, the flip switched in my brain because I was like, I've been listening for that word
Me too.
because they say the phrase M count a
Yes.
bunch in Bad Batch, but they've also said it over there in The Mandalorian. Um, I don't think we've heard the word midichlorian spoken aloud since Disney bought Star Wars. Now, correct me if I'm
No,
wrong.
we it might have been in Ahsoka. Doesn't what is the David Tennant's droid? Why am I
Right.
blanking?
Who Yang?
Yang. He might just say you have like the least force ability I've ever seen. I
Yeah,
don't think he said midichlorians.
right.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I
But
feel like it would have jumped out at me, but maybe I could be wrong as well. But
but
it did.
honestly only
Yeah,
Qui-Gon brought it up before.
yeah.
Qui-Gon and like on screen.
Now, do you think that phrase kind of, I mean, it's been talked about in the publishing side, obviously, and fans have talked about it, but it kind of disappeared from the live action Star Wars and the animated Star Wars as like a focal point. I know it came up in Clone Wars animation here and there before Disney bought Lucasfilm, but do you think it was like the fan response to the concept of midichlorians that made it kind of go away for a while? Because when I was 19 years old when the Phantom Menace came out, and my gut response to this concept of midichlorians was, Star Wars isn't science fiction. The Force isn't supposed to be like quantifiable in that way. It felt a little bit like a betrayal, but obviously it's coming right from George Lucas. who created Star Wars, so you have to give him some leeway there. But I don't know, why do you think it took so long for midi-chlorians to get back into the conversation here, like, in the actual content itself?
Well, I think, yeah, there was definitely a backlash. I think I was 10 or 11 when the prequels came out, so I wasn't, like, online, but I remember later when I was a teenager, people making
Yeah,
fun of that constantly. But I feel like maybe they're more comfortable bringing it up now because they've kind of changed what it means to have the Force, especially with Ahsoka and Sabine's story of being like, "Okay," and I liked what Ventress said, like, "If you have a lot of midichlorians, it's easier for you to use the Force. Not that
yeah,
you can't or can.
right,
It's just like it's just a natural ability. Like some
right.
people can naturally sing, and then some people can learn how to sing."
So that goes along with kind of what we learned in Ahsoka too, because Sabine Wren doesn't necessarily have like this natural inclination to use the Force or ability to use the Force, but she is able to kind of train herself, or Ahsoka is able to train her in that direction. So I think that goes along with, do you feel like it lines up what they're saying on every side?
Oh yeah, I think it definitely it makes sense and like it can be learned, which I love. I love that anyone can use the Force
Yeah,
instead of just being like, okay, you're either born with it or you're not,
right.
or your father was made by the Force, so you and your sister have the Force.
Yeah,
It's like anyone technically can use it. It just might take more work for
right.
others.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to me, and I'm kind of getting used to that idea because it wasn't my assumption of the way the Force worked for a long time, but
Oh, yeah.
uh
Not with, like, them having, like, list of kids and, like, the
yeah,
Jedi picking up kids and
right,
what our idea of what the Force was for so many years, but maybe that's just, like, how the Jedi, like, their doctrination of it is, like I mean, Yang's like, you don't have the Force, like, you're terrible at this." He's talking
right.
down to Sabine the entire series. So, it could just be the Jedi kind of, like,
Being narrow-minded about it.
narrow-minded. I was gonna say cultish, but yeah,
Yeah,
narrow-minded
sure.
is better.
Okay. Let's talk about Asajj Ventress because you mentioned her as being one of your favorite parts of this episode. Obviously, we knew kinda going into this season that Ventress would be back. She popped up in the trailer. They released a press release, when that trailer came out about how, they're aware that this book came out, called Dark Disciple, and, she evidently had died at the end of that book, but they said they were going to address it in some way. I guess that was my interpretation of it. W w I guess I guess we should start with that. Were you satisfied with okay, so she has this one little line where she says, "Oh, I have a few lives left," or something, right? That was kind of their little nod
Yeah.
to her having died. But do you expect that we'll get more answers about that, or is this all they're gonna give us?
Oh, no, I expect the story to be told at another time.
Okay.
I would not expect her to tell the batch anything
Right.
because she's not a sharer. She's not gonna be like, "Hey, I was in a lake and
Right.
now I'm not," giving her life story. She didn't even
Okay.
give her name originally. So, like, I have no problem with her coming back because I felt like she was fridged in a
Right.
way, and having her like, when a female character's
Right.
taken away like that, I'm like, "Yeah, no, bring her back." But it makes perfect sense. She's magic. She's a witch.
Okay. Yeah, that's a theory that I've seen thrown around about
It's a magic
Ventress and
lake.
right, because we've seen the Dathomirian Night Sisters work their magic and bring people back from the dead, so this is a possibility. And I also saw somebody positing that we may get an episode or even an arc of that other animated series, Tales of the Jedi, about Ventress, maybe filling in some of the gap in her storyline. Do you think that's a possibility?
Oh, definitely. She was originally well, first she was a slave, and then she was trained by a Jedi before the
Yeah,
master was killed, and then Dooku found her. So she was a Jedi, and honestly, in this episode, she was acting kinda Jedi-ish.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other thing we got to talk about is the changes in. I mean, changes in her character, but changes that make sense because characters change. You know,
Yeah.
people complain about Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi because he's not the same that he was in the original trilogy, but characters are not interesting unless they change. Uh,
Like,
so
who they were 20 years ago?
right, exactly.
Like,
So Ventress is definitely along the same lines there. She is not behaving the way we are used to her behaving, but she says she has a line where she says, you know, things change, and she called herself and the Bad Batch. She said that they were both tools of a war, you know, used in this
yeah.
war, and now things have evolved. I want to ask you, what do you think Ventress's actual goals are in showing up on Pabu and trying to figure out if Omega has force abilities?
Something that we've seen with Ventress, especially like after Dooku let her go, is that she sees herself in children and other people and she goes to protect them. So honestly, I think she's there to protect Omega because she knows all these force sensitive people, it's not good for them right now. And but she realizes she has brothers and she was taken away from her family and she doesn't want Omega to also be taken away from her family.
Okay.
So I think she told them like you're not safe here. You should keep moving. And I think she's going to keep an eye on her. I think Ventress left her comm codes with Omega, you know.
Yeah, I think that's a good take on this, that she's kind of trying to prevent the thing that happened to her from happening to other force sensitive children. Um, so your inclination now, your read on this is that maybe we should, you know, basically Omega compares Ventress to Crosshair in the way that she knew there was still good in Crosshair and she managed to be proven right on that because Crosshair is
Yeah.
back on the side of the good guys. So she says they should give Ventress a chance as well. But you agree with Omega on that point, right?
And I think Omega does have the force. And I think one of her abilities, just like little Leia, is to understand people,
Yeah.
to have intuition and kind of like feel what they're feeling. So she tells Ventress, she's like, you like us. You're still here. Ventress doesn't argue.
Yeah.
Ventress is taking time out of probably her very busy schedule. She's probably got like 5 bounties and she's hanging out with this kid on a boat, like
Right.
I don't think Omega's wrong.
Speaking of the boat, we did get a couple fun action scenes in this episode. So of course they had to give us the fight. There was a fight
Yeah.
between the Bad Batch and Asajj Ventress, which, you know, I'm sure
Mwah.
there are fans out there that are like, I just want to see what happens when these two
Yeah.
opposing groups go at each other. What did you think of that battle
Oh,
sequence?
it was glorious because this is who like Obi-Wan and Anakin couldn't take down together.
Yeah.
She just always like slipped away. Like they could not bring her in. And she obviously was not trying to actually hurt them or kill them. She was just like roughing them up a little bit. And I think that just shows her character growth in a way. And I love the scene when Omega comes back and Wrecker's in the air and like they're on the ground. And she's just like, what did I come back to?
Right. It's kind of like that meme of Donald Glover from Community walking in through the door and
Yeah, everything's on
everything's
fire.
on fire. Yeah,
Everything's
exactly.
on fire.
Uh, and then there was the other action scene. Ventress takes Omega out on the boat, and they're trying to use the Force to summon the local undersea wildlife, I guess.
Yeah.
And Ventress, I guess, accidentally conjures up this giant, like mollusk type creature that attacks the boat and is doing everything it can to try and eat them or whatever. What did you think of that action scene?
Oh, I love that Ventress's solution wasn't violence in the end. It just
Right.
again shows how much she grew and also like Omega calls off her brothers and her brothers are like, okay. They
Yeah.
listen to like they're trusting Omega. Omega has really grown up. in the past few years. So yeah, I think it showed a lot about the characters.
That yeah, her using the force to kind of calm the creature reminded me a bit of Grogu and the Rancor in the Book of Boba Fett. I don't know if it called that to mind for you. We've seen this ability used here and there.
Yeah, baby Ahsoka with the
Right.
whatever that creature is, and then Ezra's is like Doctor Doolittle of the Force.
Yes.
He's like very animal based, and I honestly think Ahsoka, not Ahsoka, Omega's relationship with Batcher, the reason she was able to like chill out this wild creature was because of her Force connection too.
Hmm. Could very well be. Let's talk about the end of the episode and the way that Asajj kind of leaves things before she leaves Pabu. So w- we think she's lying to Omega, or at least Crosshair and Hunter think that she's lying to Omega when she says, "You don't have the Force, you don't have a high M count or whatever. Don't worry about it." And then the Omega leaves and goes off with Wrecker to go have lunch, and she tells them like, "Oh, if Omega does have the Force, she's going to have to leave. You're going to have to let go of her, and she's got to come and be trained as a Jedi." Basically, they don't agree with that. Obviously, they want to keep her around and don't want to be separated. And then Asajj basically says, "Watch out for the Empire. They're still hunting you," and then takes off and leaves. Why do you think she? Because I think you and I will agree that in all likelihood, Omega will have the ability to use the Force at some point. But if Asajj comes here to try and protect her, and she decides, "Oh yes, this kid does have a high M count," why do you think she decides to just kind of take off in the end?
I think she knows that Omega's brothers are capable. They're like
Yeah.
the top
Right.
squad. And again, she doesn't want to separate a little girl from her family.
Yeah.
So I think it's all about her own trauma that she's
Okay.
like, I can't do this. And I think she tells Omega, like, you don't have the Force, just so she's not worried.
Yeah.
And maybe also she wants her not to connect to it because
Mm.
maybe that would be more of a, bring more attention to her if she does.
Along the same lines, again, this is reminding me of Sabine in Ahsoka, where it was a character that we didn't know could use the Force and is is at least trying to use the Force. If I had to ask you to predict by the end of this season, do you think we'll see Omega, outwardly and directly using the Force?
Yeah, and I feel like at least my prediction or what my wish is that she and hopefully all her brothers um are going to be part of the path that we saw in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. That they're and I
Yeah.
hope that's what Ventress is doing too because we know
Okay.
Quinlan Voss
Right.
was in the path and we know
Yes.
Quinlan and her, you know,
Okay.
if you wake up in a magic lake, what you're going to do? You're going to find the reason that you were in the magic lake, who you saved, right?
I love
So,
it. I love that theory. Yeah. I was just reading about the path in that Obi-Wan comic book. Um, okay. So do you think, last question for you about predicting the future of the Bad Batch here. Do you think we'll see Asajj Ventress again before the series ends?
I hope so. I don't know. There might be like an almighty battle and they're like, we got to call up like everyone we know.
Yeah.
Like, let's call up all our friends,
Mm.
all of like Omega's new aunties, you know?
Right.
She's she's calling Fennec because honestly, I think Fennec could have called the Empire and be like, "Hey, MCount girl over here,"
Right.
But I think she actually likes Omega and they're neutral. So yeah, I think she might be back.
Well, that's an interesting point too, because I feel like this episode kind of puts the end of the previous episode in a different context. Because my reading of the end of last week's episode was that Fennec Shand was kind of betraying the Bad Batch and selling them out. Did you feel the same way?
I was a little worried because I love Fennec too,
Yeah.
and I'm like, she's neutral. She's very neutral. She
Right.
has a code, but it's a very neutral code. So I was like, it could go either way. But then I was like, oh, Venture's coming back. Who would you call if you found out somebody asking about the Force? The only bounty hunter you know that has the Force.
Right. Very interesting to see what's going to happen. Do you have anything else that you would like to say about this episode? And if not, do you have anything that you're hoping for or expecting from the final 6 episodes of The Bad Batch?
I just love that the metaphorical hand that Crosshair gives her is actually like an actual hand, and that she takes it too. So
Right.
that just shows how much they both have grown. That he's willing to forgive her, she's willing to take help. And
Yeah.
honestly, I feel like everything she was in that episode makes perfect sense to who, like, where her story has gone. And I
Mhm.
just love seeing people who have I love seeing villains actually atone,
Okay.
actually become heroes, because a lot of times they just, you know, Vader and Kylo Ren come to mind, you know?
Sure.
They don't get a chance to actually truly atone. So both Crosshair and Ventress get to. So
I see what you're saying. So most of the time the big villains in Star Wars they'll like turn back to the light and then die immediately. So they don't.
yeah, death equals
Yeah.
redemption is a common trope in
Okay.
Star Wars and in a lot of media, honestly, because it's the easiest thing to do. Because you can't be like, oh, well, we got to put
Yeah.
him on trial.
Right.
He's got to like do some community service. He can't just do like one good thing and he's atoned. You have it's steps.
Yeah,
So
that is a more interesting way to tackle it. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Anything that you're hoping for? Anything you are expecting from the rest of this series? Because it is ending
oh,
in about a month.
I have learned the hard way is to have no expectations when
Okay.
it comes to Star Wars. Do not predict anything. Anything can
Okay.
happen. I'm really hoping it doesn't hurt too much, but I
Right.
think it probably will
Yeah.
because just like the time period they're in, and we do not see these characters again in any of the further timeline.
That's always the question is like what's gonna happen to them? Where are they?
Why?
How come they're not around later?
Yeah, Rex was only with Wolf and Gregor and Rebels.
Mhm.
Echo would have been with him. Where's Echo?
They're on the path. They're on the
Yeah,
hidden
yeah.
path. There you go.
They're just driving around. They're just
With
flying
Quinlan
around.
Voss. All right. That is going to bring us to the end of our discussion of Star Wars The Bad Batch for this week and to our final segment here on Who's the Boss. It's called First Steps into a Larger World. This is where we talk about the media that we've been consuming and or enjoying outside of Star Wars. My example this week is, of course, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I'm a big Ghostbusters fan. I've talked about it a bunch on the show previously and on the other podcast. Uh, and I did see the new Ghostbusters Frozen Empire movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a little overcrowded. There's just too many characters, and they tried to cram in too much into less than 2 hours. I think somewhere out there's got to be like a 2.5 hour cut of this movie that just plays a lot better. And I felt that way about like Rise of Skywalker too. It just felt rushed. Just too many things crammed into too short amount of time. That's my big critique. Otherwise, I think it's going to grow on me. I think I'll probably watch it again when it comes out on 4K or whatever, and I think I'll enjoy it all the more watching it at home. But how about you, Candace? Have you been watching or reading or playing any games lately? Anything like that?
It's all Star Wars.
All Star
I'm
Wars.
just realizing it's all Star Wars.
Nothing outside of Star Wars.
No, it's all Star Wars because I started rewatching The Bad Batch again
Okay.
to get the whole thing, and then I was reading The Living Force, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm ingrained with this. It's
Okay,
it's
just
it's
completely
it's everywhere.
100%. How about the parks? Like you said, you live in
Oh yeah,
Orlando.
yeah.
Did
I
you
live
see
like 15
anything that
minutes from
was
Disney World. It's
yeah.
awesome.
What's your
So,
favorite attraction that's not Star Wars related at Walt Disney World?
oh my god, that's so hard. I mean, Haunted Mansion is a classic. I am obsessed with the Pepper's Ghost, like,
Yeah,
of it all. But yeah.
right.
But
Haunted Mansion.
Everest's my favorite roller coaster in
Oh
Animal
boy, yeah,
Kingdom.
that's a good one. Expedition Everest with the Disco Yeti. as they
Disco
call me.
Yeti.
Yeah. Love it. Okay, Candace, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your week to come and chat with me about Star Wars. I really appreciate your input. Some great discussion there. How can people find you if they would like to find you?
Um, on Twitter, I'm Candace is a Geek. Everywhere else, I'm Candace Kaw, Kaw. And yeah, you can find all the Geeky Waffle stuff at thegeekywaffle.com.
Fantastic. Thanks again. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. It's so much
I,
fun.
Yeah. Thank you. As for me, I do have the other podcast, Pop Culture Explorers Club, that I'm co-hosting with my friend Drew Gergich. This week's episode is all about Godzilla and King Kong, in advance of that new movie coming out next week. And then also next week on this podcast, Who's the Bossk, we'll be talking about another doubleheader episode of The Bad Batch. 2 episodes coming out next week, number 10 and 11 of season 3. And you can find me on Instagram at Who's the Bossk Pod. As always, visit laughingplace.com for all your Disney news and opinions. Thanks to the Fraggle folks, too, and everybody over there at the Jim Henson Company for inviting Laughing Place to participate in that press junket. My name is Mike Celestino. Thanks so much out there for listening. Thanks, Bloom, in the comments for commenting so much. Bloom said this was my favorite episode as well, so they agreed with you, too. And see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.